So hopefully you've just seen the video that was filmed literally 2 minutes ago where I explained why I was having the issue with these bolts going tight and then going loose and me thinking I've stripped the head. ATF fluid. Go back and watch that video, I explain it in detail. But what we're going to do now is explain a bit more about my head bolt upgrade. Now, like I said, this block's fine. I could go and get a brand new set of BMW head bolts and we'd probably be okay. I can't see why it wouldn't hold the power that I really was making. I don't know why so many people have issues with lifting heads, but maybe I don't want to find out either. So the fact that we can do a head bolt upgrade now for literally less than standard head bolts, I'm kind of excited about it and I want to try it. And the worst thing that could happen is if I do cock this up, I'll just have to pay a man $380 to come and retap and fix the holes. But I think we're going to be okay. I think. My testers have been pretty solid. So let me explain the testing. When I had the original issue with the head bolt slipping, or not going tight, I'd already had a set of the incorrect bolts supplied by a supplier. They are these ones here. They are about 26 millimeters. Hopefully you can, I might just change the lighting. They're about 26 millimeters longer than an N54, and bing! They are an M12 by 1.75, where an N54 thread is an M11 by 1.5. They're a pretty beefy bolt, and it's what I had on hand. And at the time, I was thinking, is there any way I can use this? I spoke to a few people, and I am aware of people that have actually drilled down into the block to increase the amount of threads that they're biting for the ARP head studs or bolts or whatever. And to me, it sounded like a good idea. There were the concerns of possibly changing the way the block tensions up. I don't really know if it's going to be an issue on one of these. I've actually spoken to a guy since then that has his head studs torqued to 195 Newton meters. He's had it for a few years and he's had no issues with block distortion. So I'm guessing at these sort of power levels, sub 1000 horsepower, you're not going to enter issues with over-torquing it or changing the shape of the block and pulling the crank out of alignment. And that is the issue. On big power engines, that's why they use torque plates when they'll assemble or build an engine. It's to keep everything in line when it's torqued down. As you torque it, it may twist it and put the crank journals out of alignment. Anyway, I don't think it's an issue with M54s, but I was keen to do it. I got talked out of it by a few people that do things properly, I guess. But I think it probably would have worked. However, my concern was drilling down. My tester I did was fine. The bolt lines up fine. I did it really half-assed. I didn't really think about it. I just got the hand drill, drilled into the block, tapped it with this M12 by 1.75 thread, and it went in nicely. And we had literally another 26 millimeters of thread biting in to clamp the head down, less chance of it stripping, and also quite an aggressive thread as well, being a 1.75 versus a fine 1.5. However, I then went back to the drawing board and then basically I was scouring manufacturer fitment listings for head bolts, and Repco, which is like Australia's version of Napa Auto Parts, or O'Reilly's, they actually list the dimensions for rod bolts when you have a trade account. So I could search through and it wouldn't tell me what the bolt would fit, but I could actually search by length and thread, which is kind of really helpful, and I bet Repco will remove that from their website once this becomes more public knowledge. But it allowed me to fairly quickly search through. 5 or 6 hours later, I found 3 sets of diesel M12 by 1.5 bolts, and I got one here, that I thought were possibly going to do the job. Now, one thing that none of the manufacturer specifications listed were the size of the head. They would list the tool that you would need to connect to the bolt, but they wouldn't list the flange size on the head. And that was a concern because obviously the M54 with M11 bolts, it can't have too big of a head. They also didn't list the washer size, and again, it's the same problem. If the washer's too big, it won't fit in the actual recess for the washer. That one you can see there. So I ended up buying the 3 sets. Now, this one here is a Hyundai diesel engine, and this was going to be the backup plan if I need to drill into the block. Basically, because the N54 is an M11 by 1.5, I was going to tap straight into the M11 thread with an M12 tap, hopefully get it all lined up, and then have decent, strong purchase, I guess, but then drill even further down, and I think that would allow us to get ridiculous clamping pressure in this block. Probably overkill. Don't think we're going to need it. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly confident standard diesel rod bolts are designed to handle a lot more cylinder pressure than petrol ones, even turbo motors. And just the bolts to hold, when you clamp these down and torque them up, they feel really solid compared to an N54 head bolt. I'm sorry for all the times I've gotten rod and head confused here. Yeah, basically when you're torquing up the standard BMW head bolts, you can feel them flex, you can feel them twist. You don't get twist and flex with the diesel ones. I hope they're still stretching to yield, obviously. So yeah, this was one of them. The other one was a Nissan 3-litre diesel 4-cylinder rod bolt. That's the one we're going to use in this one out of a ZD30. They're an M12 by 1.5. They are officially 1mm shorter than an N54 head bolt. And the theory with that is we're going to tap straight into the M11 threads on the block, bore them out to an M12 by 1.5, no drilling, everything is going to line up. As long as we get the tap right, we should be pretty safe. That's what I've done with 2 test bolts, both torqued to over 150 Newton meters in this block, and no issues. I'm hoping. I did mention in the other video, when you torque up a ARP head stud, they get torqued to 128 Newton meters. So we're going beyond what you do with ARP stuff. And yeah, it's not pulling out of the head. So that's what we're going to roll with. I also bought some Mazda 4-cylinder diesel, turbo diesel head bolts. And I have one here. And this one caught me out because the actual flange on the bolt is too big and it will not fit in the gap on the N54 or the recess for the N54 washer. So that's the plan in this video. The way we're going to upgrade the rod bolts to a 12mm rod bolt. Now this is only the main 10. So we're replacing the 11mm bolts with 12mm. The outer ones we're going to do some testing on. So these ones weren't concerning me. I was not stressed about the outer ones. I haven't been doing anything with them over the last few days. But what I'm going to do now is we're going to feed... Getting a bit of a mess here. Let's put these back in their holes so they don't get confused. I don't know if I've got any pictures, but the block looks like an absolute mess now. I was using sockets to emulate the thickness of the head, and when I did the first test, which I think went in that one, no, I can't remember which one it was. It must have been this one. It's that one, and then that one. So many tests. But yeah, basically I had that, so it was about 6 to 8 mil less thread in the block than when the head was on, because the sockets were taller than the head, and then we torqued it down, it torqued down fine. I did that to see if it would tear the threads out when there's even less purchase than standard, and it has been fine. Can't remember what I'm talking about now, but the head is a bit of a mess because the block is a bit of a mess. The sockets would actually bite down into the block, and they've sort of recessed into the block, and that happens at around 100 Newton meters. So at 100 Newton meters, there's enough force to push a socket into the alloy of the block. It's amazing what the heads go through. Right, moving forwards, I want to see what we can do with these M9 by 1.25 N1s. So these go at the very end. We're going to put it in, I'm going to torque it up to BMW spec, and then we're going to take it further and see what gives way. See if the bolt gives way or if we strip a thread. After what I've done so far, I'm fairly confident we're not going to strip a thread. I don't know how people are pulling the threads out of these blocks. I was super nervous about it. I've read about so many people that have damaged the threads. Maybe it's just getting used a lot. But let me put you on a tripod. We'll torque this up with the snap-on wrench, and we'll see how far we can take it before it slips. See you guys shortly. So when you turn these snap-on torque wrenches on, they do like a calibration, which I think calibrates the G-sensor. I think they use a G-sensor to work out the angle. The way that you torque these get a 30 Newton meters, then 90 degrees, then 45 degrees. So let's see what we've got it set to. We're in degrees mode at the moment. 30 Newton meters there. And actually, I'll just screw it down by hand quickly. I haven't cleaned these threads. There's no new lube on the bolt. It's just a residue from old oil. And oil does seem to get down in these holes just from engine running. Right. Now, are you in shot? I believe so. So you'll hear the torque wrench. You can hear it squashing the gasket down. So we're up to 19 Newton meters. So that's 30 Newton meters. There we go. Now we need to switch it over 2 degrees. 90 degrees. So that's the first torque sequence. We'll see if we can do it in one sweep. Probably won't be able to. Oh, maybe. Oh, we went to 96. So I went a little bit too far. Something that I really sort of didn't catch me out that much, but you get flex in the tool and flex in the bolt, and it all sort of amplifies to how much force you need to put on. So that's now had 30 Newton meters, then 90 degrees. If it was a brand new bolt being torqued down properly, it would now go to 45. So let's switch this down to 45 degrees. And something I'll show you in a second, when you are in degrees mode, the snap-on gives you a Newton meter rating at the end of the movement. So we'll do a 45. All right, we went to 50, and that shows 60 Newton meters. So there's not a lot of force on those bolts. This bolt is pre-stretched, so there's a good chance it's getting a higher torque reading than if it was stretching. But let's take it a bit further. Let's do another 45. Oh, she's feeling tight. Get a bit of movement. That's another 45. So we've gone up to 68 Newton meters. I'm gonna do another one. So that's another 45. We're now at 72 Newton meters. We've not stripped the thread. So to be honest, we've now gone a 30 and then a 90 and two 45s. Or is it 345? I'm gonna have to check the footage, but you guys have seen what we've done. We've gone too far. The bolt feels good. It's not pulling through, it's not going loose, and the Newton meters are increasing each time. Let's do it again. Let's see what we can get it up to. I'd like to get these torqued down to about 80 Newton meters. It's going to be tighter than they should be, and I think that's what I'm going to roll with if we can get it. So another 45. We're at 76. Let's try it again. I might go to 30 and see what it goes to. 77. So if I do, we'll get it around to 45. What did that go to? 77. Now I don't know if you saw that. I'm going to try and explain this as well if people are doing this for the first time. The way the BMW bolts bite, so we'll start the movement there. The torque wrench has recognized the degree. The bolt hasn't moved yet. The bolt has not turned. That's just stretch. So that's 10 degrees on the snap-on and the bolt has not turned. I'll tell you when the bolt turns. There, it just started turning. Okay, we're going to 40. 78. Oh my gosh. We're going to 45. Okay, it's getting tight now. 79.8. God, I reckon that's enough. I reckon that's enough. Whew, that's a lot. That's a fair bit of torque on those little bolts. You can see it's getting hard to hold the head, sorry, the block and head there. Look, I'm happy with that. I'm going to assemble this engine and you guys are going to watch it happen with cheap Nissan M12 by 1.5 main head bolts, and then we're going to over torque the outer 9 mils. See what happens. Let's see what happens. I'm pretty confident with that though. Everything I've been playing with, what I've learnt with threads, playing with these bloody torque wrenches for the last 2 days, that's going to have a lot more clamping force on the head gasket than a standard set of bolts or a standard torque sequence on those end ones. And that's all we're trying to do. I know a lot of guys overthink the job of all this, but all we want to do is keep the head gasket squashed between the head and the block, just so it doesn't push out or the block doesn't lift. Sorry, the head doesn't lift. I think we're going to be good. Right, let's get on to getting the block prepped. I'm going to pull this head off and work out how I'm going to cut them. And I'll show you how I've been tapping these ones. All right, time lapse while I pull this one off. I just thought I'd show you the noises that it makes when you crack these off. Now keep in mind this one doesn't have ATF on it. And we'll see what sort of force is required. So that required 107 Newton meters to loosen off. That was one of the problem ones. Try this one. So this bolt torqued up with no issues. Oh, didn't make any noise. So that one's got ATF on it. Ah, oh, worries me. They might not be torqued properly. This is also an ATF one. See, this one's tight. Same amount of torque's got on those two bolts. This one's harder to undo. Oh, that was 111 Newton meters. All right, I'm gonna switch back to time lapse. That first one I did cracked like a mother trucker. So yeah, don't put ATF on your bolts. It definitely messes with the way they torque up, the way they stretch. It's really scary. All right, back to time lapse. All right, so I've taped it up. Now the only reason the tape is there is to, well, try and not get any of the metal filings from the tapping into the part where the oil is. That's the proper word for it. The part where the oil is, the oil galleries. Now, obviously, there's a gaping hole down the front. However, what I did yesterday, it didn't actually make too much of a mess. So hopefully we're going to be fine. I'm going to tap one side, tip the block up, clean it with brake clean, and then do the other side, tip it that way, and try and get it all out there. Also going to vacuum, blow it out with air, try and do it that way. What I didn't want to do was just sort of blow it out with air and then it go up in the air and then down into the hole. Also got the sump on for the same reason, just to try and keep the chance of any alloy filings getting in with the oil for the first start, because we don't want to damage it straight away. I can't remember if I said it in this video, but the reason I'm doing this now, the main reason, is because it would take another 4 or 5 days to get $200 worth of BMW head bolts, and I kind of want to upgrade them. There is a very fast N54 that I'm aware of from Egypt. He is running M12 by 1.5 Volkswagen head bolts, and he's getting up close to 1,000 horsepower. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a budget option for everyone that can't afford to do ARPs. If money was no object, it'd be getting ARPs, a full set of 11mm ARP head studs. But budget is an object. So hopefully my mistake of using ATF fluid may just end up in a result of cheap head bolt upgrade. And I will push this car. I don't know if I've said it on camera yet, but the new goal with this car is to do a 4-second 1-to-2 at full weight. I've got nothing against the guys that strip the cars out, but I like to run them at full weight, how you'd actually drive the car on the street. These aren't race cars, they're street cars. I want interiors. I want to go fast with power, not with compromise. That's the best way to look at it. All right, so the plan of attack. What I've been doing on the test ones that work the best. This is you've got about 30 to 40 mil of, hopefully GoPro picked it up. You've got about 30 to 40 mil of a 12 mil diameter hole before you get to the threads. Now the tap that I'm going to use to tap it, I'll show you on here. These are the two I've been playing with yesterday. We have an intermediate tap, which is the one on the left, and I have a base tap on the right. And the only difference between the two is basically how aggressive they start at the bottom. Using the intermediate tap is harder to line up with the threads that are already in there, the 11 mil threads. Basically, if you use the intermediate tap, hopefully we've got enough light here, this tapered section down that end, it's too easy for it to not catch the 11 mil thread and then destroy the threads. Where when you use the base tap, it's much easier to catch the original 11 mil threads. But that is crucial to doing this yourself. If you're going to do this at home, if you try and tap this and you don't line this up with the original 11 mil threads, you will weaken the block. On the two that I did yesterday, one I tried really hard to line the threads up, and the other one I just sent it. That's the one I sent it. It bites fine. So I think we're going to be good. It's time to get to it. So first step of it is what I do. I use a 12 mil drill. And I just run it down this hole. Now I'm doing it by hand. You can see it's quite tight, but it just opens this up a little bit more so that there's less chance of this tap biting in the wrong place, because the taps won't actually slide down. Even though they're a 12 mil thread, they won't slide down in that hole. Whoa. All right. I'm gonna get to work. Did I mention that you absolutely should not do this on your own engine? I can't remember if I mentioned that. Right, I have replaced my ATF with 10W50 engine oil. Interestingly, maybe you guys can see me for this. Interestingly, as I was cleaning the little oil can out, the ATF was heaps easier to pump than the 10W50. So 10W50 is a much thicker oil. Maybe that is, the ATF didn't provide enough shear force. I don't know. Anyway, as you can see, I've basically ran the 12mm drill bit down the 12mm hole, and it just opens it up a little bit. You still can't actually get the tap in, but this is what was happening yesterday. So basically, we run it down, and when it gets to the threads, you'll actually feel it, and that's when you've got to really pay attention. So we'll just screw this down now. And if I really pulled on it, it would probably slide up and down, but we're not going to do that. Okay, that is the thread point. So I'm filming the first one. I'm nervous. This is when it's going to cost me $400 if I cock it up. There's a little bit of oil down there. I'm going to double check it. I'm going to double check it. Take it right out. Get light. Basically, I want to see if that did bite in the right spot. It did. Let's hit that top thread. Okay. All right, guys. Let's try again. All right, there's oil everywhere. And because it's a 12mm hole, the threads self-center. Getting it straight is no problem, but what we don't want to do is chew away metal, or basically chew through the old threads. We need to go in the same depth as the original threads. So all I'm doing is I'm not pushing down, I'm letting it bite into the metal and basically screw in with the original M11 thread. All right, we're biting now. She's in. Gonna add a little bit of oil just to help lubricate it as it goes down. When you do threads, I think you're supposed to go half a turn forwards, quarter of a turn back, but we ain't got all day, have we? The tester I did yesterday, I just smashed it through. I'm taking a lot more care now than I did with the tester. We'll see what happens. There's not a lot of force required to cut this in, but assuming you line up with the M11 thread, you're not removing a lot of metal. Don't want you to see my face. Add a little bit more oil. All right, so it's gotten quite hard now, which will mean it's at the bottom of the hole. But we'll just let it bite in a bit. There's still, obviously, we're talking fingertips here. I don't want to be too rough, but that's it. That's the bottom. So I'll pull that out. We'll blow it out, vacuum it out, run it through a few times. Oh, it feels pretty good. Also, yesterday when I did this, I just had an impact on it. That's on the test block. I wanted to be really rough with the test block and then know how much care I need to take with this one. Threading nicely. Whoosh, nerve-wracking. Great success. I think we've done it. All right, that is number one. I'm gonna clean it out. I'm gonna switch you guys. Actually, you know what I will do? We'll do a test. I'll clean it out and then I'll run a head bolt through it. And make sure the head bolt goes smooth. So, to clean it out, we'll add a little bit of brake clean. Oh, don't ruin my masking tape. Perfect timing. Right, this is the moment of truth. Does the head bolt go down without biting? Basically, if the threads are caught up or not lined up properly, it'll bite and it won't go down nicely. This one's going down nicely. Ooh. Ooh. We have a winner. She's done. Just needs the head on there now. It's kind of amazing. All right. It's the best one. That actually went down nicer than the ones I did yesterday. And the ones I did yesterday still, they torque down really good. I think I might be overthinking this whole tapping process. I think we're good. I don't know if you can see it, but the threads are clean. No metal biting. We're good. Oof. Oof. Win. All right, I'm going to switch it to time lapse. We'll do the rest and I'll give you an update. I'll let you know if I cock anything up. All right, that is them all tapped and drilled. And I just thought I'd show the GoPro's useless. I will overlay footage with my phone of looking down the hole. I was trying to make it obvious at the start. That's not right. So I was trying to explain at the start, and I can't remember how much emphasis I put on it, but the scary thing about doing this, if you are actually just tapping an M12 by 1.5 hole, you'd use probably a 10.5mm drill bit. Now the hole that's in there holds a 11mm bolt. Now that 11mm bolt is to the edge of the threads. So the inner diameter, or the actual inner diameter of the hole that's in there now, will be less than 11mm, but it's probably going to be more than 10.5mm. In fact, it will be more than 10.5mm, I imagine. The problem is if you get the threads completely offset. So if these new threads don't line up with the old 11mm threads, you'll end up taking away a little bit too much meat, and then there's potential for these bolts not to actually bite into the block, and that's what makes it dangerous. The two that I did yesterday, I did one trying really hard to line it up, and then the other one I just smashed it through, and I don't think the threads would have lined up, and they both torqued up fine. But the scary thing is going to be whether these torque up now. So, yeah. Let me get the footage. I'm going to use a new head gasket. Now, the reason being for that is I've now invested a bit too much time in this engine. So this was the head gasket that was on it just before. It was a Chinese head gasket, and they're cheap, but I kind of wanted to test them and just see if people could use these as a cheaper, safer option, because like a full gasket kit was about $200 from China. Aussie. However, I think when this goes back together, I'm going to use this L-ring. This is the same gasket that I have on the engine that's currently in the 17T car. And we know that's holding absolutely fine. No issues with that 18 months on, and it's been pushed pretty hard. So I think I'll throw the L-ring on. I'm going to clean up these gasket surfaces again, put the head on, and I'll let you guys watch and see if we can torque it down. Okay, so I'd originally planned for this to all be in one video, but it's just getting really, really long. I think if I have the rest of it together, it's going to be like an hour again, and I know you guys don't like watching an hour video. So I'm going to separate it off here. But hey, we have successfully drilled the block for 12mm head bolts. we just don't know if those 12mm head bolts are going to torque down yet. The torquing sequence did not go to plan. I couldn't do what I'd done on the test block, but you will see that in tomorrow's video. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Love your thoughts and opinions on what I've done, what I've done wrong in the comments below. You know I always read them. Thank you very much for watching. I think we're going to have a budget head bolt upgrade, but you'll see how it worked out in this case in tomorrow's video. Thank you for watching along, and I'll see you then.